Hello and welcome once again to Film Craic, where Nick continues to be away. Don't know what he's doing, but he's not here. But someone else is here. Thank God for that. And who is it? Introduce yourself.
It's me, Gav Crimson.
Fantastic. Yes, back again. Always welcome to have you on. So you curated this bunch. What are we talking about here, Gav? What's the theme?
Well, I suppose what are the themes? So three X-rated films by filmmakers that aren't necessarily associated with adult movies. The vague theme tonight.
Yeah. Three people with kind of exploitation credits, but not necessarily XXX, right?
Yeah.
So those are Fireworks Woman by Abe Snake.
Better known as Craven.
Boy Napped by Spencer Logan, or David Ransom is his producer name. That's David Durston.
Yeah.
And then Louis Sue, The Divine Obsession. Good old Uncle Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah. X-rated trip to Trove.
Yeah, still churning stuff out as well. I don't think I've seen a new Trauma release in years. I don't know about you, but they're still pumping them out.
Apparently, yeah.
A recent one I noticed, Shakespeare's Shitstorm, right, which is, I think, Trauma's take on The Tempest.
Yeah, well, I think isn't there a bit of Shakespeare in the Divine Obsession as well, where she's reciting a bit of Shakespeare?
Yes, there is. Yes, you're quite right. It's a Shakespeare seduction scene, isn't it? Which is
yeah.
What about you? It never fails to get me going. Right. Okay. So I guess we'll seeing as we have one gay one, and two straights, we'll do a straight gay straight, I suppose. And yeah, let's kick off with well, are we calling it the Fireworks Woman? Angela is the Fireworks Woman. Angela the Fireworks Woman. What do you think?
Well, maybe just simply put it down to Fireworks Woman, but the full title seems to be Angela is the Fireworks Woman.
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out if that's the title, if that's from like the theatrical print or something that was added for video.
I'm not sure that the titles on the version that's in circulation at the moment seem to show I added like years later, like lots of it sort of video thing. But
yeah,
the original but the original poster title is definitely Angela is the Fireworks Woman.
Oh, okay, it's on the original poster. It's funny, because I noticed it did have so 1975. I did notice it had a Japanese release in 76, so I was curious and I looked it up. And in Japan, it was released as Dead Heat Porno 2, which makes no sense. So I was curious.
No, I think they got it. I think they got it in Italy as well. It definitely travelled to Italy as well.
Yeah, but I was curious as what Dead Heat Porno 1 was, and that turned out to be the Sharon Kelly movie Alice Goodbody, which was softcore, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's a strange way to put it.
It's quite fascinating to me when things get retitled in different places. Yeah, in Japan, this is the sequel to Angela Goodbody. It's quite amusing.
Not sure what the connection is there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's odd. I can see if they were both XXX at least, that would make sense. But to have one softcore and then, although Sharon Kelly was very popular here because she came here to star in a Pink film, where it begins with her parachuting out of a plane, and the parachutes are like stars and stripes and stuff, and she lands in Japan and she has all these adventures. And so I think she had quite a following here, and they must have invited her over to make a film, and she was like, "Yeah, why not? Free holiday." So
Why not?
right, what's the story here then?
Well, sort of, Angela's is passionately in love with a guy called Peter, but the only trouble is Peter is also her brother. Yeah, also paying that end.
Yeah.
So after they act on their desires, the shame drives Peter into becoming a priest, whilst Angela is cast out into the lustful wilderness and has various other sexy adventures. And so, like, watching on the sidelines is Nicholas Byrne, fireworks man, played by Wes Craven himself, who
Yeah.
mysterious figure who got shows up at their town annually to stage the fireworks displays, and heavily implied he's also the devil.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. He's got a little bit of a tempting Eve with the apple sort of vibe, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of one of the many unusual aspects of this is that, Wes Craven's, in the film in a fairly significant role. Particularly, it doesn't come across as one of those film directors, sort of frustrated actor film directors who, always puts himself in a prominent role in his film. Maybe do the occasional cameo, but this is, a fairly significant role here.
Yeah, it's funny because I was looking around and I saw, so this is the only Triple X one he direct, although that's also in dispute, right? Some people are not 100% convinced it was him behind the Snake name. Some people think it might have been producer Peter Locke, right, who goes under
I think
Carmen Rodriguez in the credits.
I think the first person who made the claim that Wes Craven directed it was Bill Landis in the Sleazoid Express film.
Ah, right.
And given Bill's propensity for bullshit, I think that did trigger a bit of a backlash against the idea that he directed it. And they may have been Peter Locke, who also went on to produce The Hills Have Eyes.
Right, which is peak. I think that's my favorite Wes Craven film. I think is Hills Have Eyes.
I mean, probably one of the hundreds of things I wish I'd asked Bill when he was alive is, how did he come across this information that Wes Craven directed this film?
Yeah, but you'd like to ask Bill Landis a lot of questions like that, though, right?
Well, all I can think of is that Bill was around Jamie Gillis for a while. I think Gillis lent a few quotes to the Kenneth Anger biography that Bill wrote, and a couple of
right.
Yeah, so maybe he got the name from Jamie Gillis, who is like, on the hunt for the names of famous film directors who made films with Gillis. So
yeah,
possibly.
It's a difficult one to, if I had to hazard a guess, because I wouldn't be surprised either way, because Wes Craven was obviously around. He did edit other pornographic films and stuff like that, and I mean he wasn't, because he was an editor. He did have a kind of fast-paced editing style, and this film has that. But then again, it could also. I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone else either. But if it was, I don't know. What do you think? Do you have a strong opinion?
I don't know. I don't know. It seems so well. He's in it. I mean, there's music from Last House on the Left in it as well. And
Right.
I don't know. I thought dark themes do feel like this could have been the work of a horror film director moonlighting adult movie.
Yeah, it's got that, because obviously he was Last House on the Left being a remake of a Bergman film as well, and this has that slight art house pretension to it as well, right? Not in a bad way.
Yeah,
I quite like it, but
yeah, you can sort of feel a lot like European, art house influences. It reminds me a bit of a film called Strawberries Need Rain. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, the Larry Buchanan film.
Yeah, that
no, I've never seen
feels
it.
like a sort of, it's like a very similar sort of mixture of heavy Bergman influences and exploitation sort of elements.
All right, because it was Sorry Isn't It Rain was recently up on YouTube on it's quite a good channel called White Slaves of Chinatown 3D. But it got that channel got yeah, but it's back up again now as under a different. But they haven't put up all the old content. So
no, it's surprisingly good for a lot of deep channel film. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm quite keen to see that. I'm hoping someone might re-up it again because it's a bit tricky to find nowadays.
Yeah, I think it only had a British. It sort of had a pre-cert video release in the UK. I'm not sure if it ever came on video anywhere else.
Right. There's quite a few gaps in the Larry Buchanan stuff that I haven't seen, but hoping to catch up with that. But so the other thing I found was quite interesting as well. So in regards to Wes Craven and hardcore was I was looking around, I was looking at the little things you normally don't always look at the IMDb, rather than just what he directed and produced. I was looking for all the things like what he was like camera or electrics or something like that. And then there's this film called, I think it's lost now, called Loops from 1972, which Sean Costello made, and Sean Costello's commented himself about it on the IMDb. You can read it there. Excuse me. And he talks about, and it had Lucy Grantham and Fred Lincoln from Last House on the Left, and of course Last House on the Left was originally going to be hardcore as well, right?
Yeah. So it's been sort of around there, but I don't think anyone expected he ever directed a film.
Right.
Correctly.
Same. It's a real shame it wasn't hardcore for us Susan Peabody fans, but in this on the IMDb page for Loops, Sean Costello talks about how he made this film, and it was basically a story about a filmmaker who wanted to go legit and ended up making hardcore and didn't tell his wife and all that, and he claims that Wes Craven was at the screening and burst into tears because he was like, "Oh, this is my story." So I thought that was kind of interesting. So that may lead further credence. I don't know.
But supposedly, from what I can work out, the version of Fireworks Woman that's in circulation at the moment, the cut version.
Oh, okay.
It came out on video in the early 80s, that time when I think a lot of adult video labels were like cutting or kinky and sort of violent material for film. So apparently, in the uncut version, there's a scene of, a man having sex with a fish.
Okay, well that's interesting because a man gets hit by a fish.
Yeah. Well, apparently the mad fisherman who rapes Angela early on in the film, in the uncut version, he sort of surfaces again at the end, at the orgy at the end, and ends up sticking his dick into a fish's mouth. I assume it's the same dead fish he used to beat up the guy earlier on in the film.
Right. One hopes it's within a couple of days, because otherwise that fish is going to be rotten.
Yeah, so
not hygienic.
He got his money's worth out of the fish.
Yeah. He battered someone and got his head. That's one of the scenes in the film that's kind of memorable, I suppose, is the rape of, we should say it stars Jennifer Jordan, right? And Sarah Nicholson on like a mound of ice, right? At the docks.
Yeah. And supposedly there's a urination scene in the uncut version that's missing from the I think could be true, because it's like, if you remember that scene where she's being like marched down the wilderness by that sadistic couple.
Yeah.
And it seems like to be like an awkward cut, and the guy's cutting her dress off. So I think maybe something's been cut there. There was there's a plot synopsis in a magazine called Flip, and it does describe the scene where she is forced to urinate onto her own hands or something. So that's possibly, but that would also tie the film in with Last House on the Left, which also has a again, maybe that's further evidence of, similarity.
Yes, Wes's secret kinks.
Yeah, well, you know.
And of course, the other person we didn't mention, as Sean and S. Cunningham, right, who did do a kind of a softcore. I think I haven't seen it, but a softcore white quarter, right? The Art of Marriage, and then
Yeah.
Together, which was hardcore, but it was like educational, right?
Yeah, but and what was the one? Case of the Smiling Stiffs, was it?
Yes, but I think the hardcore version is lost, right? As far as I know, it's only the soft one that we have nowadays.
Yeah, that even had a British theatrical release, I believe.
Right. Yeah, Case of the Thousand Fifths, and it's known as was a Case of the Full Moon Murders or something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's very 70s in that way, in so much as yeah, they've got to throw something weird and a rape or something in there somewhere.
yeah,
Um. How I actually kind of quite enjoyed this. How did you get on with Fireworks?
yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, and I think it's a very interesting. If it is a Wes Craven film, I think it's something that shouldn't be overlooked by people who are interested in film. You're
Yeah,
probably going to get more out of it than you have the Hills of Ice Part 2.
this is true. It's only missing a dog's flashback, right? Or maybe a fish having a flashback to how he was fucked in an orgy. We forgot to mention that we should mention the brother is Eric Edwards, and Helen Madigan's in the film as well, and Jamie Gillis and Mark Stevens turn up for the orgy at the end, right?
Yeah, so quite a few notable names in there.
The other thing as well, mentioning the score as well sometimes is very horror movie like, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. That main theme reminds me slightly of Rain and Tears by Aphrodite's Child.
Ah, okay.
That's me. I don't, maybe slightly, maybe not enough to get sued for it.
But yeah, like you said, yes, indeed, if it is part of the missing puzzle and you're interested in Wes Craven, it's definitely worth a look. But I would also go so far as to say, I mean, maybe not essential viewing, but it's a pretty, even if it's not directed by Wes Craven, right? And he is in it, so that's interesting enough in itself. But even if he
Yeah,
wasn't behind the camera, it's a pretty good little 70s relic, right, of this kind of thing.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Better than Definitely more stylish than most.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Two thumbs or other appendages up from me and Gav.
Yeah, so better than being hit in the face with a wet fish,
Yes,
which actually happens in the film, yeah.
or fucked by a fisherman if you are a fish.
Yeah.
All right, okay then. Let's go to the I don't know, the other side of the fence, I guess. I don't know. Boy Napped.
Yes, by David Durston, the man who made I Drink Your Blood. But I think there's another thing where I think maybe Bill Landis is the one who wrote the story that Durston
Yes.
directed. I don't remember hearing that before. It mentioned Leland Express.
No, but obviously I think this is more of a shoe in to be true. I think I I'm pretty sure David Durston fessed up right before he.
Yeah, yeah, but I think in Nightmare USA was.
It could be, or it might be not explicitly said, but I think it might even be on like a throwaway comment in like a commentary track, maybe for one of the later ones for I Drink Your Blood. He might just have mentioned that I did do a bit of hardcore or
I
something.
mean, many years ago, I was in touch with someone who was attempting to make a documentary about Zebedee Colt, which I don't think ever came to fruition, unfortunately. But
About what?
he
Sorry,
was.
say that again.
I was in touch with someone who was attempting to make a documentary about Zebedee Colt, which I don't think ever
All
came to
right.
fruition. But one of the people who was in touch with was David Durston.
Hmm.
And apparently Durston was, quite surprised, and not necessarily in a good way, that some of his adult movies were listed on the IMDb, and seemed a little
okay.
baffled as to how that got out there.
Once again, Bill Landis outing people who don't want to be outed.
So I don't know.
Because it's interesting that because I don't know much about but at a guess, David E. Durston was homosexual, so it would
Yeah,
make
I
sense.
believe so. Yeah,
Yeah, it would make sense that he'd be more into directing this than something.
So I think he eventually, talked about it because he was on the IMDb and people knew about it. But I believe he was sort of for quite a long time like wary about people knowing that he was gay and that he did gay porn
Right.
for fear it might, affect their cult reputation of I drink your blood. Or
Yeah, but it just
made
ended
it
up
like
enhancing it in the long run. I think a similar thing happened with, I think back in the 90s, David Dakota was still very cagey about letting people know that he used to do hardcore and that he was gay, which was laughable if you ever saw any of his films of the 90s, because they were so outrageously homoerotic, right?
yeah,
But I think only relatively recently he come just totally fessed up to doing hardcore as well, I think.
yeah.
Um, yeah, anyway, so a boy napped. Yeah, as you said, David E. Durston, I Drink Your Blood, which is of course a classic. Stigma, which is a very weird film.
Yeah, all the films I've seen of him, they're all sort of slightly different, but all quite interesting.
Yeah, and he has a very small acting part in Gang Wars, right? He's in there
Yeah,
somewhere.
there's the Devil's Express.
Yeah, which is another very strange film that I enjoy more each time I see it somehow.
Yeah. So of course he did this one as well, and it's another strange instance of he didn't put himself as an actor in I Drink Your Blood or Stigma, but he puts himself in the pseudonymous gay film he's made.
Yeah, as an old. I assumed as well because for some reason I always think of him as being younger, so I thought he had old age makeup or whatever. But he would have been like 50 or something when he'd directed.
Yeah. I think he's slightly exaggerated,
Right.
old age makeup.
So in this one, Dwayne Carter, who I don't think was in anything else, he's our main character. We hear his narration, and he's a roommate who's got the hots for Michael Hardwick, which is just the best porn name, really. I mean, you don't get better than that, straight to the point. Who I think was in one other Peter DeRome film, right? Adam.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Eve's.
That's the one that Greta Garbo's in, I believe.
Oh, right. Okay, I didn't know that. I've not seen Adam and Eve's, but I'd be curious to take a look.
Well, there's a brief clip of it on YouTube, I believe. Like, it's her last screen appearance, but she didn't probably know about it. Like, filmed it from afar,
Ah,
walking down the street, and sort of cut it into the film.
that's a
Stuff
very
like that.
Dick Randall move, right? Like who's in Challenge of the Tiger? Um, Someone ridiculously famous is in that, right? At an airport.
Yeah, and that was that other film. The last horror film, I think, a few people caught at
Yeah,
Cannes Film Festival.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so they got Greta Garbo.
wow, name value. I mean, yeah, I'm sure lots of people. Wow, Greta Garbo in a porn film. Yeah, although it is a gay porn film, that's slight
Yeah.
messaging there. But then again, Greta Garbo, I suppose, might be. I don't know. Does Greta Garbo get a lot of gay love in the same way that like you know um Judy Garland or something like that? Is she like a camp icon? I don't know.
I assume so. Yeah.
Yeah, she would fit
She
that
wanted to be
more.
alone, but she ended up in the gay porn film.
Yeah, yeah, that might have been taking it a bit too far for her. The- But anyway, yes. So Dwayne Carter lists after his new roommate Michael Hardwick, but he's straight as the day is long, right? So he's not having any of that. But then a couple of guys pay Mike, as played by Bobby Niles, another guy, to let them in. They break into the room and they tie up Dwayne Carter. They kidnap Michael Hardwick, because he's the son of a wealthy guy, as played by David Year's cameo, non-sex cameo role. And basically the idea is that they're ransoming him, but also they have their wicked way with him while he's there. And then he turns out that he is actually gay after all, and he enjoys his captivity.
Just as well.
Yeah, I suppose it could have been worse. And so it's a bit of Stockholm syndrome. So he goes over, he does a Patty Hearst and kind of helps them to get the money from his old man. But then eventually Dwayne Carter finds out, he ends up and there's a whole lot of butt fucking and fisting. And so this is slightly difficult. I don't feel entirely qualified because I'm not gay, so this isn't working for me in a utility way. But so I'd have to guess, and I would guess if I was gay and still otherwise had the kind of same sexual orientation or whatever, I think I would probably really enjoy this as a good rough feed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get. It's we're probably sort of missing a vital part of the entertainment here by not being
Yes,
gay.
we're not the target audience, right? But
No. I think it's an interesting sort of like kidnap drama as well, though, and sort of alternates between the two. And I think you can tell he's sort of gay porn. Wasn't he? His first, he had a bit of a more legitimate background exploitation film. That brings that to this.
right. Oddly enough, recently I've been watching a few of the Japanese gay pink films, not hardcore, but gay pink films that Hisasu Sato directed, the three of them, and they worked. Each one is a really good film, even though I wasn't getting anything out of the sex angle. So I suppose you could argue that this doesn't cross over, but there's enough good old exploitation stuff in there that you can kind of see that, oh yeah, if you were the target audience, this works just fine, right?
Yeah.
In the same way as, I don't know, I mean, I get a kick out of like the Enema Bandit, for example, Water Power, right? Like that works. I know that says terrible things about me, maybe, but in a similar vein, right? Like I can imagine, because it's pretty rough in moments. I would be keen to see the other David E. Durston hardcore Manhole, right, which was made in 3D, I believe.
Yeah, still was missing the last time we discussed it. But...
Yeah, I hope that turns up and they package some nice little 3D glasses with it so you can see whatever the fuck is to be seen.
Yeah, of course, not that one. But even trying to find any sort of basic information on that one, particularly difficult.
Again, I think that's where Bill Landis, I think, was the first place I read about that.
Yeah.
Right. So 1976, The Divine Obsession, aka 18 and Under, ! Which is again, the good old 70s. You just can't get away with stuff like that anymore. Yeah. And this is Lloyd Kaufman under the pseudonym Louis Sue. He directed quite I think he did like as a director, at least. I know he had he was also like location manager and stuff for Saturday Night Fever and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Love Thrill murders, I think he's involved with that.
Yeah, and
triumph.
sugar cookies and things like that. And
Yeah,
but I think as director, I think he did some, which I've never seen, The Girl Who Returned, which just sounds a bit like a kind of glorified student film. And then I think the first Trauma release is The Battle of Love's Return, right? With
yeah. It's G-rated comedy.
yeah, with the lovely Lynn Lowry. He's got quite a funny bit in his one of his autobiographies about like attempting to kind of seduce Lynn Lowry and just failing very, very badly. Lynn Lowry, of course, in I Drink Your Blood as well.
Yeah, the small world of exploitation filmmaking.
Yeah, and Shivers, right? And there's a lot in common between Shivers and I Drink Your Blood, I think.
Yeah,
And one of the striking images of both films is actually, I think, is actually because Lynn Lowry's got that. I mean, she's a very attractive, but she's also got that slightly too emaciated on the edge of almost looking sickly. Like she's hot, but she's almost sickly looking, and that works really well, I think, for Shivers and I Drink Your Blood.
I think I first saw the Battle of Love's Return, and like someone taped it from me off a Dutch TV channel, I think TV 1000 or something.
Ah, okay. I've not seen it.
It mostly used to like play like porn, and I think you had to have a card to de-scramble the signal. But they'd also like play sort of weird movies like you said, the Battle of Love's Return, uh, Singapore Sling, that.
Ah, okay.
And the Dirty Weekend, the Michael Winner film, which was sort of banned on.
Ah, yes, that was yeah, there was a bit of a hoo-ha about that on video, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it was, they sort of rejected it for a few years, held it back.
I think at that time as well, wasn't he already like like a restaurant critic for.
Yeah, I think he was sort of getting out making films.
Was it who was he a restaurant critic for? Was it the Daily Mail or
Oh, probably something like that.
something like that? Yeah, he's another interesting character as well, right? Because he's such a charming seeming raconteur and stuff when you see him, but apparently a real piece of shit from time to time, right? Not giving a shit about the safety of stunt men on Death Wish 3 and stuff like that.
Oh god, yeah. Rocky Taylor, I think, things a misfortune on the set of that one.
Yeah. Good film though.
Yeah, with damaging yourself in a
I do enjoy Death Wish 3. Yeah, so anyway, we digress. Why did we go down that road? Oh, Lynn Lowry, Battle of Love's Return. Yeah, so Battle of Love's Return was, I think, it was the foundation of Trauma, and they didn't quite know what Trauma was yet, right? And then yeah, and in between he goes off and he does that movie in Israel, right? The Big Gus, what's the fuss? Which apparently is just awful. I've not seen it, but again, he mentions in his autobiography something like, because I think him and Michael Hertz went over to Israel to make it, and it was a horrible experience. And I think the people who backed it said something along the lines of, "This is the worst thing that's happened to us Jews since the Holocaust," or something like that.
Yeah.
And yes, and he did some porn, and then I guess there's those, is it 3 or 4 kind of vaguely sexy comedies they make that they all have an exclamation point at the end, right?
Oh yeah, that's not.
Check on you, or Waitress, or
Yeah.
and then finally Toxic Avenger, they get it right. They've discovered this is what trauma is.
Yeah, well, this seems to have been like the most widely seen of his porno films. He's played 6 months in Manhattan. I thought he played on 42nd Street under the name Nympho's Divine Obsession.
Okay.
I guess Divine Obsession was too subtle for 42nd Street.
Right. But it's again, we were talking about specifically with because I think with David Durston, what we were saying was each film seems so different anyway that it's kind of a moot point. But Fireworks Woman as potentially being a Wes Craven film, I think this is, if there's no doubt that this is a Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah.
It does have that trauma like tonal shifts from, because it's kind of a fairly tragic film, this, really, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like weird mixture of a sort of depressing ruffian, like that gross out comedy where he's going to vegetate.
Yeah, I mean, there's like that. There's the guy at the orgy who's like endlessly pissing. Just can't stop. What's this got to do with anything at all, right? So it's interesting to think about. I mean, with Lloyd Kaufman, I mean, did he learn the trauma style from doing films like this, or was he just bent from the beginning and making kind of because apparently I didn't realize this, he claims that he wanted to do Broadway musicals, right, rather than films. That was his thing. So that kind of makes sense as well, because all his films have there's always too much in them, isn't there? It's like there's too much going on in a trauma film always, and they're much more fun to read about than, because I remember reading his autobiography, the first one. How everything I learned about filmmaking, I learned from The Toxic Avenger, whatever it's called, and reading about Trauma's War, which I hadn't seen at the time, and James Gunn as well is in there talking about how great Trauma, and it sounded great, like so much going on, it sounded mad. And then I remember sitting down to watch Trauma's War, and like just after 5 minutes, it's just, oh, just please stop. It's just, it's just too much, too much.
Better as an anecdote than actually to sit through yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's odd. It's but when Trauma get it right, they can be a lot of fun, right?
And this one even had a British theatrical release, distributed here by the infamous David Hamilton Grant.
Ah,
yeah.
I'm assuming it would have played private clubs only.
It got an X certificate, but I think there wasn't much left of it for David Hamilton Grant to distribute. The UK version is 55 minutes long, so.
Oh, okay.
So that's about 35 minutes missing then.
Yeah, that's and it's probably the good stuff as well, right? So even though it's got nothing to do with the film, the man endlessly pissing might still be in it.
Yeah.
So this one, so this one is Julia Franklin, right? Who again was in one other, something called Beneath the Mermaids, which don't know. Yes, and she, well, when we see her at first, and we get to hear in a monologue, she's stripping live on stage with the Coquettes, right? Which is it's not those Coquettes. It's not the San Francisco cross-dressing. It's spelt, well, Coquettes, right? But again, a kind of interesting, of all the things to allude to, because the Coquettes, I'm guessing at this time, like outside of very deep gay subculture, who knew about the Coquettes, right, until recently? So Lloyd Kaufman is, quite clued in some way.
Yeah,
but I don't know about, so it's actually opens with someone called April Summers, right, just finishing up her act, and I don't know who this person is into film. Is she a well-known burlesque dancer?
You seem to assume she must have been at the time, but it's lost on me now, I think.
And it's interesting as well that you can tell they deliberately chose like particularly ugly men to sit in the audience and ogle them, right? Or at least they give the ugliest guys the close-ups, right? So it all looks a little bit more grim. And yeah, so we basically get a feature-length flashback to how she got there. Yeah, first kind of seduced by a home tutor, right? Ted, back in Ohio, I think it is, or Cleveland, I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
Although she kind of seduces him, really. And then she goes to New York, tries to get on Broadway, ends up in Loops. Yeah, she seduces Eric Edwards again with a Shakespeare blowjob.
Yeah. Like a poster of sugar cookies in the background as well.
That's right, and two of his hardcore films, right? Sweet.
Yeah, it's always good when people put their own filmography into the film.
Yeah, but yeah, like you said, though, as far as I know, I don't think there's any others, any other of his hardcore stuff that's readily available other than this, right?
This is the only one I've ever seen.
Yeah. Apparently, I missed it, but apparently, according to IMDb connections, there's also a marquee for Virgins in Heat, right? The Michael Finlay kind of loop catcher.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Wet and Wild, right? That's also known as.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a very strange.
Interesting enough, have you ever heard of? I think it's called Tales That Will Tear Your Heart Out, and it was a sort of abandoned horror anthology film that Wes Craven was.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Did something end up later on being completed, or
some of it ended up in Doctor Much MD, I think.
Ah, okay, okay.
So anyway, some of the Wes Craven directed footage from that surfaced a few years ago, I think on a DVD release of Last House on the Left. And there is a scene that takes place on 42nd Street, and that does grab the marquee for Nympho's Divine Obsession. So
okay. So that's how we know it did definitely get that release title.
Yeah. So thanks to Wes Craven, we now know.
Thanks, Wes.
Nympho's Divine Obsession.
Yes, and yeah, basically her life just gets where she goes. Well, it's kind of up and down, right? So she becomes an escort, and then she gets fucked over, and a streetwalker, and eventually, well, so the ending's kind of worth talking about, right? Because it has a double ending, right? I guess we're not quite sure which one is the real one. So either, spoilers, either she shoots herself in the head and dies on stage, or she lives to be a sad, lonely old woman who dies in bed.
Either she has a brief miserable life or a long miserable life and just fantasizes that she shot herself when she was young.
And the only friend at the very end, the only friend she has left is the man who's always kind of loved her from afar, who she spurned because she's like, oh no, I'm a, she's convinced that she's kind of a born slut, right, who is made to be trampled on.
Really dark ending.
It is.
I don't think any of the later trauma would have gone that way.
No, although every now and again there's some surprisingly grim stuff in trauma, just in comparison with some of the lighter stuff in there. And this is very much in that vein. Like there's a lot of stupid, like the loop scene when they're filming the loop. That's just silly, isn't it? That's just ridiculous, really. And then
the stuff with the cake and the whipped cream.
Yeah, and then there's a when Ted finds her again later on, there's a pretty good but rough kind of rape scene there.
Yeah.
And I would say actually that scene's actually really really well directed. It might not be to your taste or whatever, but whereas with Boy Napped I was kind of out of it's not my wheelhouse. I can say in this case, oh yeah, I'm into this, and it's just well done, right? It's a well directed scene, I think.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, although he uses the name of Louis Stu on on the credits in a Melody Films presentation.
Mm.
Yeah, on print adverts for the film and like publicity, he seems to have reverted back to his real name.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and it says directed by Lloyd Kaufman. The poster has like trauma films on it rather than melody films. So
Ah,
so that's it.
I get the feeling with him that even though he might not have advertised it, and he doesn't really mention it at all in his autobiographies, I also get the sense that this wasn't exactly a huge secret that he kept. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was quite a critically well received film. I think with this one quote saying that Antonioni couldn't have done much better of directing the film. That's really quite a good review. So maybe that's
Yeah.
why he decided to put his name back onto it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but it's certainly less boring than some Antonioni films. But it's interesting in so much as the other one that strikes me similarly is William Lustig, right? Like he wouldn't necessarily put that stuff on filmography and stuff like that. But I get the feeling that he wasn't exactly going out of his way to really hide that he was involved.
Yeah, I think I read a recent interview with Kaufman where he says he sort of does acknowledge this film now, but apparently his business partner in Troma, Michael
Yeah.
he's a bit embarrassed by the fact that they had this period where they made adult films.
Okay.
I think both their wives are sort of don't really want these films to come back out again.
Right, but they weren't necessarily keeping it from them. They were just concerned about yeah. Oh, it's funny because the Kaufman Hertz relationship in terms of what we see. I mean, so once you never see Michael Hertz, you never hear him say anything at all. I don't even really know what he looks like. But Lloyd Kaufman's just he'll be in your documentary at a drop of a hat, right?
Yeah,
I could probably get him on here.
Yeah, the only really face you associate with Troma, really.
Yeah, he's pretty shameless.
And the other guy's practically, the definition of a silent partner,
Yeah,
really.
absolutely, and that's the way he likes it as well, I guess. I guess that's how Lloyd likes it, so it works out well for them. But no, I would say the Divine. The other thing, kind of worth mentioning as well, is the soundtrack, which is kind of a bit glam rock, maybe I'd say.
Yeah, I wonder what the story was there. It seemed pretty good, maybe there's some sort of story there about who did that music.
Yeah, I looked up the artist's name in Discogs, and I did find at least one of the songs from this set. I'm trying to think what the name of the band was, because here it's just the composer's name, right? But at least one of the songs was released on a Canadian 7-inch by a band. But I've either written it down or can't read my own writing. But it did come out as a record, like a normal record that you could buy. I don't think it was a hit or anything, but I quite like some of it. Tell your mama, tell your papa too. It's quite
Yeah, it feels like it should have had a life outside of this film, really.
Yeah, it's got a bit of a sweet vibe to it or something like that. It's got that kind of, it's another. But what I like about it as well, though, is it often turns up in some of the more inappropriate scenes. I think it turns up in that rape scene, right? Like halfway through, it's like, oh shit, we've run out of background music, and it just comes in. Tell your mama, tell your papa. Don't you think this doesn't match? This isn't right. Speaking of that, we forgot to mention actually Boy Napped. Some of the scenes in that are backed by, it sounds like some sort of cheerful sitcom music or something. Yeah, so but that's always fascinating to see, because I suppose to a certain extent you can understand, like, with this kind of hardcore product that they were just putting out, they were, we don't worry too much about it, but But then on the other hand, I mean, this is a pretty well made film, right?
Yeah, sure. Antonioni couldn't do a better job of it.
Yes, yes.
Both sides.
There's one scene that made me laugh as well, just because I didn't actually understand it. It was very weird, even by Lloyd. There's a scene where she goes to a agent or something, right? There's like that factory, and he gets more and more excited, you know, and not that she's saying anything particularly, but he's like, what? He's getting himself so excited, imagining her naked, and then imagining a stop motion frog jumping around a naked body, and then it seems as if he just comes in his own pants, right? And then gets angry at her and shouts, "Get out, you feminist!" What's this scene all about, Gav?
You know, you're watching a Lloyd Kaufman film and something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So everything but everything and the kitchen sink started early for Lloyd, I think. You know what this film needs? It's good, but we need a stop motion frog. Bizarre. Yeah, so there we go. I mean, this is an interesting triple bill, Gav. Yeah. Hell, I didn't actually watch them all in one go, but it would be a hell of a way to spend an evening.
Yeah.
Invite your friends round, get some nibbles out and some drinks.
Ideal Christmas party with him.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Right. I think we're done, are we?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okie doke. Thank you, Gav. That was a most entertaining little odyssey that you took us on. And yeah, pleasure to have you on again, I hope. Either filling in or joining me and Nick to talk about something else.
Okay.
All right. See you then. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.